In the coming hour, South Korean leader Yoon is set to brief the public on the outcome of the Camp David Trilateral Summit. He's hoping to make the next Trilateral meetup happen here in Seoul. Starting today, South Korea and the U.S. are carrying out their Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise for the next 10 days, staging an all-out war scenario to prepare to swiftly respond to security situations. Japanese Prime Minister Kishida visited the Fukushima nuclear power plant for the first time over the weekend. The exact date for the wastewater release is expected to be announced after he sits down with fishermen who are against the plant today. President Yoon is set to address the nation about last Friday's summit with the leaders of the U.S. and Japan at Camp David. In a televised cabinet meeting at 10 a.m., the president will address the outcomes from the three countries' first standalone summit, the key of which were tightening cooperation and Indo-Pacific security and supply chain resilience in high-tech industries, and formalizing the three-way talks and joint military drills as annual events. Ahead of that, the president, as we speak, is chairing a separate cabinet meeting as part of the Ulchi Civil Defense Exercise, a 4-day annual pan-government emergency training drill to counter national emergencies. Also in tandem with the civil defense exercise, Seoul and Washington are holding their joint military drill dubbed Ulchi Freedom Shield. The two allies will be responding to diverse war scenarios with expanded field training. Our Lee Dae-hyun tells us more.
South Korea and the U.S. begin their Ulchi Freedom Shield exercise on Monday. The joint combined and interagency exercise is an 11-day event which will be rolled out in 2 sessions. It aims to strengthen the Seoul-Washington combined defense posture in the case of any possible emergency situation, including provocations by North Korea. Around 4,000 institutes and 580,000 people will participate in the military exercise.
South Korea will inspect any necessary defense posture and support strengthened government exercises to enhance national-level response capabilities.
Now, the all-out war scenario has been reorganized for this year's military drills. This time, it will reflect diverse threats within the security environment from lessons learned from recent wars and conflicts, including Pyongyang's new nuclear and missile threats and the war in Ukraine, as well as fake news that could be distributed by North Korea. A number of complementary large-scale combined training events will also be rolled out during Ulchi Freedom Shield. About 30 such events will take place, more than double that of last year. The U.S. Forces Korea says the U.S. Space Force will also take part for the first time.
You have the space component, you have the land component, air, sea, cyber, and the cognitive domains. How do you take all of those resources that commanders have at their fingertips and be able to utilize those effectively?
Besides South Korea and the U.S., United Nations member states, including Canada, France, and the U.K., are also set to participate. Some experts say that U.S. strategic assets such as the B-1B bomber may also make an appearance. Military authorities are monitoring for possible provocations by North Korea during the drills. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
And what seems to be in response to the joint military drills, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un visited a Navy unit and inspected a cruise missile test. According to North State-run media on Monday, the regime's leader inspected the Guard's second surface ship flotilla of the East Sea Fleet of the Navy of the Korean People's Army. He also watched on as the ship took part in a strategic cruise missiles launch drill. And the news outlet also added that the drill was aimed at carrying out an attack mission in actual war. With Japan set to release the Fukushima wastewater, Japanese Prime Minister Kishida visited the site of the plant on Sunday. Now, a move hinting that an announcement of the exact release date is imminent. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Ahead of Japan's planned release of the wastewater from the crippled Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the country's Prime Minister Kishida on Sunday made a visit to the site to make sure everything is in check.
I would like to emphasize that this operation requires flawless handling to be sustained over the long term throughout the decommissioning process.
On the same day, Japan's Kyodo News reported that the process of releasing wastewater into the ocean will begin either in late August or early September. And according to Kishida, he will hold talks with related ministers later this week to finalize a date.
Concerning the timing of the release of Alps treated water into the sea, the full cabinet will decide based on the status of safety works and countermeasures against rumours, and I will refrain from giving a specific timeline at this point.
During his visit to the U.S. for the Trilateral Summit with the leaders of South Korea and the U.S., Kishida told reporters that Tokyo is in the final stage of preparations to begin releasing the wastewater. According to a South Korean presidential office official, the topic of wastewater was not mentioned during the Trilateral Summit at Camp David. However, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol said the potential safety impact of the planned release makes it the highest priority for all three countries and the international community. Once the release begins, the process is expected to take up to 30 years. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea, the U.S. and Japan have agreed to make their trilateral cooperation regular and institutional during their Camp David Trilateral Summit last Friday. But given that it was a political agreement, how far will it go and will it last? We have our top office correspondent back in Seoul to break down some key questions. Welcome back, Soo-young.
It's lovely to be here, Tammy.
All right. I hope you're not too jet-lagged.
Oh, hopefully not.
All right. Let's first begin how significant the summit was in setting forth a new era in their trilateral relations between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo.
Right. It really has to be said how determined and united that the three leaders were on really confronting threats and challenges together. First, it was pretty remarkable how they were aligning their values and visions, not only vaguely for the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific, as it's been mentioned various times, but with the kind of meticulous and unprecedented details like supporting a free and united Korean peninsula, something Japan and the United States weren't all too concerned about before, and the mention of North Korea's adoption of foreign nationals, which was always an important issue for Japan. Second, the scope of cooperation between the three countries. It went beyond countering North Korea to become a very wide-ranging and very practical framework, which also touched upon the kind of ethical kind of issues as well. For instance, strengthening supply chain cooperation with early warning systems, collaborations between their leading scientists and the top institutions, to setting artificial intelligence standards and also jointly assisting development projects in the Indo-Pacific region, the Pacific Island countries and Ukraine as well. So the three countries are really going to work together with one another across all dimensions in every possible way imaginable. In fact, they're moving as one as they engage with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the Pacific Islands, security initiatives like AUKUS and the Quad, really becoming this an independent entity, as Seoul's top office said, in the Indo-Pacific region.
Right, Soo-young, I do have to mention, Beijing has been quite concerned or rather critical of this trilateral cooperation, right? And it also mentioned by its activities or its behavior in the South China Sea. Can you tell us more about that?
Right, so for now, it's quite clear that the three-way security cooperation is focused on deterring North Korea's threat. But then, and of course, it still hinges on the two separate ROK-US and US-Japan alliances. But again, that does leave room for more developments if needed, and officials aren't ruling anything out at this point. The so-called commitment to consult, now that's not binding as has been mentioned, but it's still quite remarkable how the three countries are going to immediately consult each other and jointly address emerging threats, whether that's security or trade. Now, on that note, it's quite clear that China is becoming a growing threat to all three nations for a number of reasons. President Yoon himself, he said that the rule of law and the freedom of navigation, the freedom in the South China Sea is essential for the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific, and that is very much in line with South Korea's liberal democratic values. And also disrupting peace in regional waters, that not only affects security, but also the really important sea lines, the lines of communication, which are essential for South Korea's export-dependent economy. Not to mention, Beijing hasn't entirely been helpful in suppressing North Korea's nuclear and missile program, nor has its economic coercion done it any favors as far as the Korean or Japanese publics are concerned, with over 70% of each public seeing China as as a threat. Now, Seoul has reasonably maintained that it wishes to have a mutually respectful relationship with China, with the National Security Advisor saying on Sunday that talks are ongoing to resume a three-way dialogue with Tokyo and Beijing at the top level. Thus, experts say that the scope of South Korea, the US and Japan's security framework may ironically depend very largely on whether China chooses to dial down its aggressive behavior or not.
Right, so I mentioned this earlier, that one of the most important aspects of this trilateral summit was institutionalizing their trilateral cooperation. The question is, though, is it sustainable?
Right, so that question of continuity, that really remains to be seen, as it's not legally binding, as you mentioned, and relies rather heavily on political will. The long-standing disputes, of course, arising from Japan's brutal colonization of South Korea in the early 20th century, that's been a huge emotional trigger point that was often politicized on both sides, making these issues a matter of national dignity. Thus, much of the focus has been on whether Seoul and Tokyo can keep the momentum going in improving their relations beyond this current administration, particularly with key elections coming up for both countries. And experts also say that US politics is somewhat of a growing risk factor as well.
It's pretty clear to me that one of the concerns that was driving the need to institutionalize and formalize and concretize, if that's a word, this emerging relationship was the possibility that the United States might, after November or January of 2025, have back in power a president who is not committed to these partnerships that we have with these two critically important Asian allies.
While executive leadership has been very crucial, going forward it would require broader institutionalization to solidify and amplify cooperation.
But there's obviously an important security dimension to this partnership. There's an important economic and trade dimension to this partnership. There's a diplomatic dimension to this partnership. There are so many areas that are going to provide fodder, if you will, for cooperation, coordination among the three countries here, that I think that the legislatures in all three countries, in my view, have a stake, have an interest in participating in this emerging partnership, and I hope they will.
Right, lots of dimensions to cooperate and collaborate in economy, security, defense, you name it. But the question is, why is it so critical, the trilateral cooperation, so important for South Korea? Does it matter for the average South Korean public?
Right, that's a very good question indeed. And well, for South Korea and South Koreans, increasing trilateral cooperation with the US, with Japan, is a crucial step, not only in terms of overcoming the country's most immediate security threat, namely North Korea, but also expanding its role in the world as a liberal democracy, protecting human rights, freedom and the rule of law with its partners across the world. It's also a matter of safeguarding the livelihoods of South Korean citizens, according to presidential spokesperson Yoon.
If all three countries expand technological and people-to-people exchanges, especially in cutting-edge fields such as AI, space and quantum tech, not only will they secure future growth engines, but they can also lead to direct economic effects such as job creation, increasing the size of the economy. Then, as industries becoming more sophisticated and more jobs are created, a virtuous cycle would increase overall welfare.
Yoon, before I let you go, I'm curious when and where when we actually see the next trilateral summit?
Right, well, for now, the leaders are going to have to wait and see when to hold their standalone summit. But we do know that President Yoon has suggested meeting in South Korea, as the leaders have already met this year in Hiroshima, Japan, and also now Camp David in America. But in the meantime, though, they are likely to hold these sideline summits when they have these global conferences. So they will be catching up quite frequently, I imagine.
I imagine too. All right, thanks always for your coverage, Yoon. Nice to see you back in Seoul.
Yeah, lovely to be here, Tammy. Thank you.
All right. With more than half of the year 2023 already gone by, a lot has happened on the culture front over the last 8 months. Now, as we get ready for the rest of the year, you might wonder what's next. Our cultural correspondent Song Yujin fills us in.
With just a third of 2023 left, there's still a lot to be excited about in the world of culture, especially when it comes to performing arts. Clearly, there has been a lot to be excited about as well. The total ticket sales for the performing arts scene in Korea during the first half of this year grew over 40% from last year. The number of shows increased by 24%. Taking the lead are musicals, making up nearly half of the ticket sales and having the highest number of tickets sold. Korean audiences will be able to enjoy 3 of the big 4 musicals this year. Cats concluded its Korean tour in June, while The Phantom of the Opera, returning after a 13-year hiatus, moved to Seoul last month after a 3-month-long run in Busan. Marking the 10th anniversary of its Korean production, Les Miserables will make its return to Korean theater in October. Classical music commands the spotlight as well, which offered the most number of shows during the first half of the year. More than 10 overseas orchestras are scheduled to perform in Korea between October and November. They include the London Philharmonic, Vienna Philharmonic, Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra, Czech Philharmonic, and the Oslo Philharmonic. World-renowned pianist Cho Sung-jin will grace the stage alongside the Berlin Philharmonic and the Leipzig Gewandhaus Orchestra. Pianist Im Yoon-chan, winner of last year's Van Cliburn International Piano Competition, will play with the Munich Philharmonic. The world of pop music is buzzing with anticipation too, with big names following in the footsteps of Harry Styles and Bruno Mars. Singer-songwriters Charlie Puth and Sam Smith are set to perform in Korea as part of their Asia tours. And don't forget the big and small screens. Although summer's big film releases have wrapped up, it's too early to be disappointed. At least that's what one film critic told us.
2 Korean films screened at this year's Cannes International Film Festival, Cobweb and Sleep, are gearing up for their premieres. There's also Dr. John and Lost Talisman starring Kang Dong-won. On the streaming front, Netflix Sweet Home will be rolling out its 2nd season in the fall.
So, even as the year winds down, the cultural scene will stay vibrant, offering plenty of entertainment. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
Cultivating watermelons can be especially tiring for farmers as they have to hunch back and kneel down. But there is now a unique method where the cultivation is done in the air instead of on the ground. Chung Eun-ju has the story.
Watermelon is one of the most popular summer fruits. Watermelons are usually grown on the ground using the conventional horizontal farming method. This means farmers have to bend down, squat, and strain their backs throughout the process, making it a physically demanding task. This watermelon farm, however, is entirely different. Watermelons ripen on a suspended net in the air. This is a patented vertical watermelon cultivation device. Once the seeds are planted, the rest of the cultivation process can be accomplished while standing. With the vertical cultivation method, the need for manual labor is significantly decreased as the working position is adjusted to match waist levels. The system also allows farmers to plant 2 rows of watermelon instead of just 1, resulting in a 1.8-fold yield increase. This vertical cultivation technique is also used to grow a type of premium fruit known as the hamiga or hami melon.
The RDA provides funding and supports the research and development of technologies that can reduce labour and increase productivity on site as the ageing rural population suffers from a labour shortage.
Around 3 years ago, the Rural Development Administration developed and promoted a similar vertical cultivation system for watermelons, fixing plastic nets on the roofs of greenhouses to support the stems and allowing the melons to grow vertically. Chung Eun-ju, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in northern Mexico, where at least 1 person has been killed amid flooding caused by the arrival of tropical storm Hilary. The storm made landfall on Sunday and is moving toward the southwest United States, where preparations are being made for potentially catastrophic flooding. The U.S. state of California is already seeing increasing levels of wind and rain, and a flash flood warning has been issued to over 9 million people in downtown Los Angeles, as rainfall has surpassed 2 inches in some areas. Now, the National Weather Service predicts these storms' effects will be felt until Monday, with more than a year's worth of rain potentially falling in parts of California, Arizona and Nevada. Power outages caused by strong winds are also expected. A state of emergency has already been declared in California and Nevada to support hurricane response and recovery efforts. Now, Denmark and the Netherlands officially announced on Sunday that they will provide Ukraine with F-16 fighter jets in a move set to bolster the war-torn nation's air defenses. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen promised 19 jets to be given periodically until 2025. Dutch PM Mark Rutte, meanwhile, did not provide a figure or time frame, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 42 fighter jets would be provided. The announcement comes after the US on Friday wrote a letter to Denmark and the Netherlands to express Washington's support for both the transfer of F-16s and for the training of Ukrainian pilots. The first jets will be delivered after Ukrainian pilots receive at least 6 months of training. Now, Russia's first lunar lander in nearly 50 years has smashed into the surface of the moon. Russian space agency Roscosmos said on Sunday that the unmanned Luna 25 spacecraft crashed after entering a pre-landing orbit where it spun out of control. They said they lost contact with it on Saturday. Roscosmos had hoped to be first in a race with India to land on the moon's south pole on Monday to begin a search for water, an essential component to support potential human bases there. Barring any issues, India's Chandrayaan-3 craft will touch down on the lunar surface on August 23rd. And finally, Spain have won their first ever Women's World Cup, beating England 1-0 in the final. La Roja's captain Olga Carmona scored the only goal of Sunday's match in Sydney, putting the ball past England's goalkeeper in the first half. Spain almost doubled their lead in the second half after being given a penalty kick for handball, but the spot kick was saved. Spain are the 5th country to have won the trophy in the tournament's 32-year history. Meanwhile, Sweden took home bronze in Brisbane on Saturday, beating World Cup co-hosts Australia 2-0.
Good morning. Heat wave alerts were expanded to more parts of the country over the weekend, and feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher due to that high humidity. There will be passing rain of 5 to 60 millimeters during the day today. Central inland areas could see 60 millimeters an hour of downpours. In fact, Seoul could see rain pounding down in the late afternoon, right before the evening commute. Late summer heat feels like showing no sign of easing up, with Seoul topping out at 32 degrees this afternoon. Daegu and Gwangju will be going up to 34. The regions that are free from passing rain, like Daegu and Busan, Gyeongju, will be under sunny skies today. Keep an umbrella handy this week. We are expecting frequent showers with a drop in highs, and they should bring more bearable morning and evening temperatures next week. Rain will start tomorrow in western parts of the country, gradually spreading nationwide by Friday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Tuesday's edition at the same time.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
I'm live.
저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 이거 없지. 펜션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.
좋아요.
Busan, Korea is already reaching the entire world. Like ocean waves that travel far and wide. It's Busan, the perfect World Expo city. Transforming our world, navigating toward a better future. World Expo 2030, Busan, Korea.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
웰컴. 엄청난 에너지를 춤으로 뿜어내는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
We're here to make a new type of news. New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's August 21st here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nal Song. Good morning. Good morning. And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. The popular U.S. fashion brand Supreme has opened its first store here in the capital Seoul over the weekend. South Korea has become the 7th country in the world to have a store of this popular streetwear. Up till Saturday, only people who made online reservations could enter the store, but from today, the store will accept walk-ins. Recently, a local news outlet found that people in North Korea are investing more in private education, surprisingly in the subject of English. A researcher from the Korea Institute for National Unification found that some schools in the capital Pyongyang are now using Disney's movie Frozen as class material. The Unification Ministry also found that among North Korean defectors, 14% of them have received private education before, a big jump from what used to be 3.2%. North Korea has traditionally banned private education, saying it's discriminatory. And coming back to news here in South Korea, a woman in her 30s has died after being attacked with brass knuckles. The assailant, only identified as a 30-year-old man known as Che, is going through police investigation. He has reportedly told police that he wore 2 brass knuckles on each of his hands to beat and rape his target, but he had no intention of killing anyone. He also chose a park in Sillimdong, which is in the Gwanak district in southern Seoul, because it was close to his house. And because he had been there many times, he knew where there were no surveillance cameras. And this is yet another crime where the assailant randomly chose a victim in broad daylight. Local media reported the victim was an elementary school teacher who was heading to school to attend a training session for teaching staff. And the incident happened on Thursday. The victim was taken to the hospital, but after remaining unconscious for days, she died on Saturday. And before the victim's death, Che had been under investigation on suspicion of raping and injuring, but now he's being investigated on the suspicion of raping and killing. And this could increase his sentence to the death penalty if convicted. And over the past few weeks, we've been seeing so many knifing rampages and random murders where the assailant and the victim had no prior connection whatsoever. And this has called for stronger penalties against these assailants. So I would now like to expand the newsfeed to the studio and ask Walter what his thoughts are on this.
Obviously, this is not, it's horrible. That's all it is. A lot of people are wanting the death penalty for this person, and we've talked about this recently about whether we should get rid of the death penalty. It's obviously not that easy. These sort of unrelated incidents of people, males attacking females is getting a lot of attention these days, and it is it goes to show that where the judicial system is here in South Korea and that we're not having harsh enough penalties, we should be really cracking down on punishments. Now, I don't know if the death penalty is going to sway people's, stop them from committing crimes in the first place. I think other things need to be looked into before the death penalty. But yes, I think people like this should be actually locked up in a dark cell and not be let out to see the light of day. But that would, go against human rights.
Right. But you are calling for graver penalties just to better prevent any incidents like this from ever happening again, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, I think that obviously it's not. As I said, I don't think it's going to sway people from attacking people, but at least they know that the government is going to, be very strict.
Exactly. What about you, Nell?
Yeah, I do think that there needs to be heavier punishments than what we generally see in Korean society, but I think there needs to be an emphasis on their crime rather than on their rights as, as criminals. Walter mentioned human rights, but at times it seems like some people have given up their rights to be human by acting so inhumane. They're choosing to do this by saying, oh, I was only going to hurt them, not kill them, I believe it's very ridiculous.
All compelling arguments here in the studio, and that was our news feed for this Monday. Let's switch gears to our discussion topic of the day. On a brighter note, we're going to look at the latest consumption patterns found among the young generation. Take a look at the screen to find out more. Have you really wanted something that everyone else has? Or had FOMO, the fear of missing out? Did this ever push you to the brink of paying far more than you should have or waiting a ridiculous amount of time just to get what you wanted? Well, you're not alone. Buying the latest item or hottest product in town seems to be a growing consumption pattern among millennials and Gen Z. Here in Korea, the most wanted yet hard to find item at the moment is moktaekgang. It's a snack made by Nongsim. It's been roughly 2 months since this snack, costing just $1 or $2, was released. But it's almost impossible to find, which is why people are paying 10 times more than its original price through online secondhand shops just to try it out. So I am one of the many who paid more than double the original price for this moktaekgang. I paid around $7 for this. I'm so excited to try it out. And I'm going to try it out here with the panelists in the studio. So, Walter, would you like one?
Yes, please.
Wow, the smell, I can smell it. It's very strong already.
This is so hard to find. Okay, let's try it out.
Wow.
It's so good.
Really?
No, you don't think it's worth $7?
Not worth $7 in my opinion. No.
Why not? Why not?
Well, I've tasted obviously what they have derived it from, and it's much better in its normal form, not in the packet form.
You don't? Okay, so Walter's not a big fan of moktaekgang. What about you now?
I like it, but I just don't see why you would pay $7. No offense. Why you would pay $7 right now. Eventually, there'll be more, and you'll be able to eat it at its right price. I mean, it's very unique. The flavor is it's kind of fishy, but also really spicy. It has that kick to it. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's just not worth $7.
What would pay $7 for it?
I don't know.
Well, you know what, guys? For people out there who did pay extra to get this, I am all for that. I am team moktaekgang. This is really nice. And today we're going to be talking about the 4 distinctive marketing schemes that seem to have attracted consumers, specifically from our generation. Just like myself, there are many people who are susceptible to this so-called hunger marketing. So now, why don't you walk us through what this hunger marketing is all about?
Right. So hunger marketing, it doesn't necessarily mean, food, right? It means that it's a psychological approach at marketing, limiting the number of products so that people get kind of hungry for it.
Yeah.
Oh, that person has it, but I can't get it. So you become more and more anxious to get it. Like Yoon, who spent $7 to get this moktaekgang. Moktaekgang is actually I guess a sister or brother product of 새우깡, which is a really popular snack here in Korea. And yeah, people are selling it on secondhand platforms, not eaten obviously, but they're selling it double, triple the original price. And this actually happened with many other products prior to this. Have you guys heard of honey butter chip?
Yes.
Honey butter chip, but when it first came out almost 10 years ago, I think 9 years ago, it was so popular that in my university, there was an ad to sell 1 chip, like what we just had, that 1 chip for 500 won, or maybe like a couple of dimes in US money.
Yeah.
So people still bought it because they wanted to try it. They wanted to be included in the conversation of, oh, it's so great. So people did that. And I've seen adults back then give each other gifts, like serious gifts, with boxes of honey butter chip.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's how big the phenomenon was.
No, the consumer psychology behind that is you want your hands on a limited edition, and if everyone tried it out and you're not a part of it, you have that fear of missing out, which is why I can relate to why a lot of people fall susceptible to hunger marketing. You're not alone out there. And Walter, there's another popular marketing scheme that seems to be captivating our generation. A hint on what it is, it's the fact that it inevitably captures your attention because of its size, right?
right?
Yes, so it seems that Korea is turning into America with big sizes, as now all Americans love their big sizes, and it turns out that Korea is too. Now, it all started probably back when YouTubers and influencers started with getting huge portions on their mukbang channels, right? They wanted to eat a lot, and now we've seen it go commercial with things like mega coffee that you can get very cheap, or as you may have seen in our VCR just then, a very, and don't adjust your screens, ladies and gentlemen, large ramen.
It's like 3 times the size of your head.
Yes, if you compare it to the size of my head, which is very big, it actually is the portion of 8 servings of ramen. Not sure why anyone would want to purchase this, but of course, it makes you look like a little Ken doll.
I mean, if you think about it, compared to regular cup ramen, it's 8 times bigger than that.
It's 8 times bigger than that, and that means it's 8 times the fun and calories.
The calories.
So yes, very, very hungry for this.
And I hear that big size marketing is popular because, I mean, if you just look at it, it's fun to watch.
I mean, people, for some reason, people just want to buy big things. I don't know why.
It seems surreal. It's almost like it's fake, like it's a toy almost for being so big. Like he mentioned earlier, it makes him feel like a Ken or Barbie holding a fake prop.
Exactly, and I think if I analyze the psychology behind that as well, I think it's for the gram too. You want to take pictures and upload it onto social media. You mentioned YouTube creators trying to eat this. Yeah, take a picture of Walter and then tag him. But it's really photogenic. I think it's really nice.
I think it's cute. I think it's the model that's a photogenic.
The model really helped, I guess, as well. Now let's take a look at the other 2 marketing ploys that have grasped young people's attention here in Korea. Could you introduce any other marketing schemes out there?
Right. I mean, there's so many nowadays. People are getting so creative, but social media.
Yes.
With the algorithm, it's limitless. You can continuously get so many different types of ad that's completely catered to your needs and wants, and of course, there's the limited edition things like we were just talking about. I mean, even with luxury brands, they always bring out this, oh, only you can have this. Only 5 people in the world can have this kind of thing. That mentality of, oh, I'm so unique.
You're exclusive.
Exclusive. I think that's what, that's what drives people. And also collaborations nowadays between brands, especially with food and cute characters like the Sanrio characters like Hello Kitty on your donut. Who doesn't want a Hello Kitty donut?
It's so
Walter
cute.
doesn't want it?
Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do.
I want a Hello Kitty donut. And, not just, cute characters, but they have K-pop stars like BTS doing collaborations with McDonald's. And it's just the regular, McNugget. But it seems more special because their face is on it.
Yeah.
Blackpink is doing a collaboration with Starbucks, and you feel like you should get the tumbler because it's pink.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know that Blackpink collabed with it, so as a fan, you are bound to try that out. Now, Walter, what about you? Would you like to add on?
I think it's just we've kind of talked about this on the show before. The younger generation are having these situations where they have to line up for a very long time. I mean, we just saw in our newsfeed as well, Supreme opened up, so people were lining up around the corner, and it was like online booking only for the first one. Do you remember when Shake Shack Burger came to town? Everyone was lining up around the corner for this overpriced burger that you could probably get at McDonald's.
3 hours long line in Gangnam.
And then Five Guys came with a pop-up store, and everyone wanted to get a burger that was also overpriced. And then again, K-pop with New Jeans has a pop-up store, and people waited in the typhoon to see their favorite New Jeans characters on a pop-up store.
Wow, the list goes on and on.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Now, speaking of all these different marketing schemes, did you guys ever fall to any of them? Were you really ever attracted to any of these schemes that you guys mentioned?
For me, no. I don't usually go for popular marketing schemes. I usually go the other way when something gets too popular or really sought after. I did, by chance, get the honey butter chips when they were in their peak, but I was sort of in with the convenience store lady, so I was like, she was very nice.
Right, you were a regular.
I didn't go out of my way.
But why?
Because I just don't like, the fear of missing out. I actually don't mind missing out because I feel like I'm still part of the people who are like not talking about this whole thing, and it gets kind of repetitive. I don't want to
Maybe that's your own way of feeling exclusive and special.
Oh, I'm not like the others.
Yeah, I like missing out. That's my go-to way. What about you?
I think the limited editions, not so much, but I do fall under the trickery that is the, social media ads. And they always pick this perfect, if I'm looking for a a bag that's kind of bigger than the average size bag that you see around, they somehow match it perfectly. So yes, I've purchased a few from those ads, and I have been disappointed multiple times at the quality of its actual product. So, you know, I think I've learned my lesson to not just jump in with online shopping and just do an impulse buy with things like that.
But you're not alone. I mean, who can say no to customized ads?
Right.
It seems like that they're listening to every conversation you have with your friends and your search history. They choose the best product for you at a very appropriate and questionable time.
Yeah.
Now, what do you guys think is the psychology or reason, though, people do find these marketing schemes to be very appealing to the extent that they decide to buy it?
I mean, like I just mentioned, some of it is impulse buy because a lot of it keeps popping up over and over, and you're like, okay, this must mean something. It means the algorithm is working. But yeah, so you kind of go into it, the impulse buy. It's so easy, especially if you have your credit card already set up, just a few buttons and boom, and it's coming to your house. And then also, if it's a popular product like the moktaekgang we just had, it's the fear of missing out. There's different things, not just in food, but in different brands of leggings even. And there's a trend amongst influencers saying, oh, I just bought the something famous, like social media famous leggings. I just bought the social media famous this. And you wonder, maybe if it's that good, I should try it too. So you end up buying it too.
And I think we can cut you some slack, given that you are an influencer yourself. You're always keen on the trends out there. Yeah, which makes you keep wondering. But as a person who's okay with missing out, do you still understand why people do fall susceptible to these marketing schemes?
I think, to be honest with you, it's 3 words: for the gram. That's all it is. It's just for showing off and to be, you know, a part of a group of people that seems to get very popular once they invest in this item or get this item. So it's for showing off, in my opinion.
Well, if I may add my opinion, and as a person who jumped onto the hunger marketing trend, I think it's because of sole curiosity. I'm just genuinely curious to see and find out whether it's that good.
But you're impatient because it'll come out eventually for everyone to do it, but you want to be in that like trend timing.
Maybe. I want to try it right now. And I also asked what our viewers had to say on today's topic. If you take a look at the screen, you can see what 3 of our global viewers had to say. Let's start off with Jiawei Ki. It says, does buying an iPhone count? I certainly don't regret buying my iPhone XR. It only has 4G and 3G, but no 5G. I may consider buying an iPhone 15 when it does come out. The Power Ranger 200 said, I make sure to look at reviews from people before purchasing anything from the ads shown to make sure that the site is 100% legit and not a scam. Benny D97 says, I think no, I don't buy things because of social media trends because I'm careful about what I'm going to buy and I may basically end up getting scammed. So I think our viewers are very smart consumers out there. But why don't we now use this time to hear from a marketing expert to see what the latest strategies look like elsewhere in the world and also find a few tips on how to become smarter consumers. Let's include an assistant professor of marketing from the University of Louisville in the States. It's Dr. Aaron Barnes. Welcome, Professor Barnes.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
All right, so apart from the few key marketing strategies that seem to have captivated a lot of young people in Korea, what are the latest trends that have been proven effective in the States among millennials and Gen Z?
You know, there's a lot of similarities between what's going on over there in Korea and what's happening here in the States. And it's really just, we don't need to overthink it. This generation spends more time on its phone than any other generation before. So those campaigns, those strategies that happen organically and start online, mobile, those are the ones that win. And moreover, it's really about showing up authentically in those right spaces and places for those causes that Gen Z consumers care about online, and taking it from the screen to the streets when it's appropriate. But really focusing on those screens, right? The video content and the ability to share and to gain some social proof by others liking and also commenting, that carries a lot of weight with Gen Z. Think about what's taken place over the past couple of years with the pandemic, but the ways to build community were digitally mediated. right? And so to be able to affiliate with my friend, I had to use some piece of technology. Now brands are getting a piece of reaction and saying, look, we want to win. We need to be where people are at.
I see. Can I ask you the second question by asking, compared to the previous generation, how does our current generation decide what to buy? What's our distinctive consumer psychology trait in our generation?
Yeah, you know, compared to older generations, it's the millennial generations right before the Gen Z, there's a lot more hanging on the values that a brand associates with. And so because there's so much time spent on phones amongst Gen Z, they have a lot more information at their fingertips. So they know what brands support, endorse, or oppose, or silent on. And that means something to them, right? If they don't align with the right things, if they oppose the wrong things, like the right things, right? That can shift preferences. They might make a Gen Z person pick a brand more so than it would make a millennial person listen to it. Just because they're not as used to looking up that type of information about a brand that they're going to buy from. It might not matter to them. I think it matters more so to us. That's
Excellent. And just quickly, any marketing traps or schemes to look out for, and how can we become smarter consumers?
Yeah, you know, I really liked the ones that you all brought up about the big packaging or the scarcity, the hunger market. Those are traps to avoid, right? Like if you don't have the means to actually buy, like if you can, obviously indulge, right? But one thing I wanted to call our attention to are these buy now, pay later tactics that marketers are employing that have the veneer, they have the disguise of our credit cards, but they come from individual department stores or brands that at least it appears that way to the consumer. When they're buying something, they see, oh, I can get this now and pay later. They might have the added benefit of not having to pay interest right away. But what it does is it just inflates how much money you actually have. And it encourages you psychologically to think, I can afford more than I can. And before you know it, you might have outspent yourself just because you're paying later on so many things that you might not have bought initially if you were paying all of it up front. So that's one thing I encourage people to just be aware of and to manage with your own budgets. Those buy now, pay later things can be tricky.
So basically you're buying time to really find out whether this is a smart thing to buy or not. All right, we'll take that into account.
Money, right?
Yeah, if you have the money. Yeah. All right, thank you so much, Professor Barnes. It was a pleasure to hear from you today.
Likewise, thank you so much again.
All right, and Professor Barnes gave me a really good tip. I am going to start doing the buy now, pay later thing because I did fall under the hunger marketing. And to be honest, I really like that experience. But what about you, Walter?
Yeah, well, for me, I still don't believe in the hype. Like, I'm so glad I didn't go and pay double the price just for those chips.
But at least you tried it.
I tried it through a friend, obviously. So, but yes, for me, it's, I don't follow the hype.
Okay, what about you, Nell?
Yeah, honestly, I think I have this mentality. I won't die if I don't have this right now, and there will be a new trend soon, and I just kind of wait for them to release the stocks, and so there's more numbers, and they'll have to eventually sell to people to make profit. I mean, unless you're an expensive luxury bag only exclusively for people, in which case I don't need it. Yeah. So I think it's that mentality I have to keep telling myself. Otherwise, I'll be like you, Yoon.
Right. I guess the moral of the day is then buy yourself time in order to be a smart consumer. And regardless of what type of marketing ploys there are out there, be cautious and only do it when you're actually ready. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Nell Song,
no problem,
and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's mine? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.